Hello, everybody. This is Karen. Let me know if you can hear me. Thank you. I will be starting the webinar in just a second. Just trying to arrange a couple of screens. I'm a one-man paper hanger here, so I will be monitoring your questions as well as running the slides. Wow, we still have people logging in. We've got so far over 25 attendees, which is great. And again, if you have questions, I'll try to get your answers. If I don't know them, I will find them out for you. I'm going to be running these webinars every 2 weeks. This webinar today is going to be on creating templated email, which you could use for either routine correspondence or for what I call mini mass mailings. And we'll talk about the send level in a minute. If you have other things that you're wondering what to do in Zoho, please let me know. I think I'm going to start keeping a little chart. I've now, as of this week, done over 200 conversions of ACT users to Zoho. So a lot of you have the same questions, and then some of you have very specific questions. So if you don't ask, I don't know what you're having trouble with. And of course, you know, I'm always there to help you. Again, sorry about the fuzzy picture there, but my name is Karen Fredericks. You all should have my email address, karen@techvendors.com. And as a reminder, all of my ACT and Zoho customers get free email support. So don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel like you have to struggle. If you have a question, please reach out. As I convert more and more of these ACT databases, I see more and more craziness. It's not like ACT or Zoho is a one-size-fits-all product. A lot of you used ACT in pretty much the same way. Some of you used ACT just for notes or just for meetings. Some of you used ACT in very, very, very unique ways. Can't necessarily say that they were done correctly or the best way, but you kind of tried to figure it out as you went along. With Zoho, you have a chance to start over again with a nice, clean slate. When I convert your data, as most of you know, I go over your data, kind of get rid of some of that dead wood that you don't need. Moving forward, if you have questions on how to do something, ask. There's a lot more functionality in Zoho than there was in ACT. Doesn't mean that you're going to be using it. Doesn't mean that you're going to be using it all. But chances are, if there's something you want to do, it's already in the program. And all we have to do is turn it on. Okay, and again, if you have any questions as we go along, please fill in the Q&A, and I'll be looking back at it from time to time to make sure that I'm getting all your questions answered. Okay, today we're going to go through templates really quickly. I didn't want to do a PowerPoint, but the problem is if I do this, if I just start winging it, I'm going to leave something out. So yes, I am doing a PowerPoint. But again, if you have any questions, just stop me. But this way I can make sure that I get everything covered. So we're going to go through templates and then sending the templates and then looking at the results. Then I'm going to give you a couple of AI tricks. You don't have to use them. They're just things that you may or may not have discovered, you may or may not like about Zoho. But I think they're pretty cool. You may want to use them. Okay, first off, just to give you an idea of your sending limits. So for those of you that were coming from Act Cloud, you had 2,500 emails that you could send a month. Those were templated emails. It was not a true campaign. If you had an Act Desktop, you needed to add the sync portion of this to get it to work. So that was costing you $480 per user per year. And again, that was only $2,500 per month. You could add the Act AMA Select, which was an additional $948, and that gave you $25,000 per month. So if you have the free version of Zoho, which a couple of you have, you ain't going to be sending anything. They don't give you any allowance. That's what you get when you get a free product. If you have the Zoho Standard, you get $250 a day. Now, if I took 250 and multiplied it out by 10, that's probably about 4 times as much as you were getting with ACT for $168. If you have Zoho Premium, you have $500, 500 email sends per day. If you have Zoho One, you have 1,000 a day, or basically 30,000. So for the same price that you were paying for ACT, or in some cases a little bit less, you're getting more sending. So that Zoho One is the full campaign module, which would be comparable to the AMA Select some of you had before. And again, if you have any questions about pricing or send limits, just ask. Okay, so to create a template, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. We start by hitting the gear button. That's that little flower. Some people call it the flower. Some people call it the gear. Some people just call it, I think officially it's called the setup button. But you hit setup. That's where all the good stuff happens. So you hit setup, you go to customization, and there's templates. Not too hard to find. To create a new template, it's funny. I've been using Zoho for about 8 years. So any of the new user wizards have long since passed. But when I started preparing this demo, I went into one of my demo accounts, and lo and behold, I saw this little wizard. And I thought, wow, I really like that wizard. So for those of you going into the templates for the first time, you can either just cancel out of the wizards and say, forget it, and I don't need it, or you can follow the wizard. I think the wizard was really, really cool, and that's why I'm using it kind of as a basis for my presentation today. So to create a new template, you go into New Template, go figure. One big difference between ACT and Zoho is your templates are specific to either your deals module, your accounts module, your contact module, or your leads module. Now, once you create say if you make a template for your contacts, you can clone it for your leads module so that you don't have to do the whole thing over again. But you do ultimately want to pick when you start what module the template's going to be for. And you hit next. So we have a template gallery. And, quite frankly, it's not huge. It's got probably about 30 templates, I'm going to guess, in there. It's got some holiday templates, some birthday templates, some sales templates. And of course, you could start with those, and that's fine. You can modify any of the templates that come with Zoho. You can change the pictures, you can change the wording, you can change the anything about it that you want. But for my sample, I'm going to start with just the one column basic. And that's the one that I tend to use when I make new templates. I don't put a lot of graphics in my templates because I know over the years, I get a better read rate when I don't put in a lot of graphics. Now, if you're in a business, maybe design, architecture, photography, I know one of my clients does invitations, weddings. They probably are going to be using more. They want to have pictures. I find my read rates for what I'm doing are much better without pictures. That's up to you. And you notice I picked the one column template instead of the blank template. And the reason being, and this is just so silly, but if you notice the one column template has a little bit of space around it, a little bit of a border. what happens when people use that blank template, they forget to kind of move the borders in. So when they send the templates, they look kind of too far to the left and right, and they just don't look right, in my opinion. So I always start with this one column template. Okay. Just like in most, if you've worked with, MailChimp, or you've worked with Constant Contact, or you use the old Act AMA, you kind of used to that drag and drop components. It's just a real common way. If you're really an HTML wizard, good luck to you. You could certainly fill in your whole template using HTML and paste it in. But for the rest of us dummies, it's kind of nice just to have, oh, I want to put something onto my template, so I'm going to drag it on. So the main things that people drag on is text. Okay, this is where I want to put text. Columns, I want to have a couple of columns on my template, or pictures. And again, you just drag and drop them right onto your template. At the top of your template, if you're working with text, you will see a standard formatting toolbar. I'm not going to go over this. I think most of you can figure out that B is for bold, I is italics, U is underline. We have our justifications over here. We have a link, a hyperlink. So if you want to have a hyperlink to something on your website, for example, hey, for more information, click here. Or got more questions? Send me an email, and that would be your hyperlinks that you would add to your templates. We can move the components. Very easy to move the components. All you have to do is click one of the components, and you're going to have the little move button right here, and you can drag your component up. You can drag it down. We can customize the components. When you want to work on one of the components, you just hit this button over here on the left. By the way, that also lets you clone it and delete it. So if you, for example, start with one of the customized templates and it's got some, riffraff or something on the bottom you don't like, you just select that area. It'll highlight it in blue and hit your delete key. If you really like the way something looked, and so you want to clone it, change the words a little bit, you can clone one of the little sections, one of the components. Okay, this is the trickiest part of the whole procedure. It was tricky in ACT, and it's tricky in Zoho. And that is, you might want to go to your local tattoo artist and have the # tattooed on your left or right hand, maybe a small little one on the inside of your wrist, because to add your merge fields, you are going to have to put in the #. The #, there's also a hint down here, which a lot of people don't notice, but when you want any of your merge fields, that means any of the fields in your database added to your template. I'm working with one client now that's working on some reports, and they have about, I'm going to say 70, maybe 60 custom fields. Yes, any of those fields could be added. They just have to hit the #, they see the list, and then they click on the field. Okay. And again, if you don't really feel like going out and getting a tattoo, just look down here. Just try to remember to look down here. It gives you a hint about that, how to put in a merge field. Attachments. Oh, some of you are going to be so happy. Everybody wanted this in ACT. And I think it's a horrible thing. I'm not a real proponent, but you can have attachments going out with your forms, with your email. I personally would rather have people click on a website, click on a form on my website. If you want to sign up, click here and have it go to your website, have people fill out that form. It automatically goes back into Zoho. That would be my preference. But some of you begged me to add attachments to your email. Now, I'll give you one caveat. They only allow you to add 3 megabytes worth of data to your attachments. So you can probably get a PDF in there. You can probably, get a Word document, maybe an Excel document. And the big question people always ask me is, why, Karen? why do you hate those attachments so much? Why do you not want me to have attachments? Well, the reason is, according to statistics, 70% of the people will use their cell phones to read email. And the problem with that is with your cell phones, they're just really tough. They get very loaded down with documents, and it gets very hard to open those documents. So that's kind of why they limit you to 3 megabytes, because it's really not great practice. But if you have to add attachments, there you have your attachments. It will warn you. Someone said, is there a way to expand the size of the template body? When I've played around, the test runs have very large white borders. Yeah, if you're working with a template and it seems like it's too small, go back to that template that I showed you, that blank template. That should be fine for the border. That's probably the best way to do it. They are set, the templates are kind of set for standard sizing. We have something called, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the name of it. But there's a special sizing for mobile phones. So that's why they don't want these templates to be too wide, because they won't responsive. They won't work well on a cell phone. And that's kind of why they limit the size of how wide you can make these templates. Because again, so many people are reading things on their cell phones, and they may look great on your computer, but not so great on your cell phone. And that's kind of why they limit that size a little bit. Okay, there's a preview and test button, which, as the name implies, lets you preview and test your email to make sure it looks good before you send it out. Now, when you preview and test, and this is exactly what I'm talking about, you can see your template, how it's going to look on a desktop when someone gets it. And you're also going to see how it looks on a mobile phone. Because again, don't forget that 70% of those people will be reading this on a cell phone. So you really want to test it both ways. Now, you can send a test email, but you can only send this to other users in your database or to yourself to see what this looks like. So it's always a good idea to test it. It is kind of a limited test. Later, if you're happy with the way the initial test looks, you can set a small subsection of your contacts. I set up kind of dummy fake contacts. I have a Karen test, go figure. I have a Karen dummy, go figure. And those email addresses on those records are to my Yahoo account, my Gmail account, my husband's account. I like to bug him. So I have like a little test group that I send to, as well as doing this test. Because if I'm sending it out to a lot of people, I really want to make sure it looks good before I send it off. Even then, I still make mistakes, but at least it's a good way to test it. This should be pretty obvious. And if you try to go out of here, it will warn you. But don't forget to save your template. This is a web program. I do have people that leave for the day. They were in the middle of working on a template. It's not necessarily going to autosave, or they close their browser. If you're right here and you leave this area, it will say, hey, are you sure you want to leave without saving? But if you just close your browser, it's gone. So make sure you save. And I always like to say, save early and often. Okay, so here we go, how we select our contacts. And the best way to do it, and I think this is what I'm going to cover in our next meeting, is how to create custom views. So as you can see, I have a custom view with all my Zoho users, and there's my 205. That's how I know I did 205 versions. Actually, it was 200 the other day. So I can go in here and I can select my group. One way to do it. I can also, where it says Zoho users group on mine, you can hit that down arrow and do all contacts, and you can filter. This is kind of like a lookup. Those of you coming from the ACT environment, you knew we had to add names into a group in order to send an email. Zoho is a little bit more forgiving. You can go in and look at all your contacts, filter it down by estate, and say, hey, I'm going to be in your area next month. Do you want to set up an appointment? Or filter it down by a certain product and say, hey, we're having a recall, or hey, we've got a new replacement product, and kind of do these things a little bit faster than having to create a group. The view up here, those are more like a group. Those are the groups that I've set up that are based on queries. And again, we'll go over those in our next meeting. But that's the way we would send, is by selecting a group. And then you go up here and you hit this arrow at the top, and it'll put a check mark next to all the names. And then you'll see up in the toolbar, it says send email. That's it. So I select the names, I do my look up my records, select them, send the email, then I select my template, and I send it, and off it goes. Now, what's kind of nice about this is it will show me how my limit is. I have Zoho 1. My limit is 1,000 per day. So it actually tells me where I am, how many I've sent, before I try to send another 600, and I've already sent 800. I know in ACT, a lot of times people would think they sent something, then they would get a message the next day that said, oh, we couldn't send it because you went over your limit. You want to increase your allowance. Plus the fact that it's on a daily basis is kind of nice. I can't imagine anybody sending more than 1,000 emails a day. It would be really tough to go, for me at least, to go through that many responses, but if you wanted to, you could increase this limit, but I think 1,000 a day is a pretty good one. You can also do one-off sending. A template doesn't have to just be for a mass mailing. Or maybe there was some person you just sent out that new newsletter and somebody got it at your database and you want them to have that newsletter. Happened to be yesterday. I sent out the invitations and several people said, oh, can you send an invitation to this person? You send an invitation to that person. Yes, we could do it after the fact. You just look up the person's record and you hit send email. When you hit send email, this window right down here opens up and says insert a template. And here are all your templates. And you notice I have some that are gold star templates. You can mark your templates as favorites so they show up at the top of the list. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. So to see the results from your templates, you just go back to your templates area and you'll see all of your templates listed. And again, I mentioned that I was going to show you how to make a template a favorite. This is really tough. You might want to write it down, but there's a gold star right here. You just click it. And when you click it, it will make that template a favorite. And if you no longer want something to be a favorite, you just click that gold star again. It takes it off. Now, as we go down the list of all the templates, you'll see the stats. And this is basically my open rate. So yeah, I have very good open rates. If you're sending this out to like leads and prospects, you're probably going to be more, if you get 20%, you're going to be doing really good. So don't look at my open rates and think, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong, because this is going to a very targeted group of people that are interested in what I have to say. If you're sending out a blanket email, your rates may not be anywhere near as good as this. So if you want to see more stats than just your read rate, you just click on it. You just click on the stat. And when you click on the stats, it's going to give you more of those analytics. You can do a preview, go back and see it. You can see your click rate. You also have different versions. Every time you go into a template and make a change, it adds a version. It says, this is version 2, version 3. Why? Well, the idea is we have something called A/B testing, where we might send one version of a template out to a certain group of people and another version out to another group. So as you change, you make minor changes in the templates, every time you send it, it's going to be showing you what that version's statistics are. which are kind of cool because sometimes you make minor changes and you go, wow, my reading rate, increased dramatically by that change in wording. So it is kind of cool that you could monkey around with those versions a little bit and still you can see version 1, version 2, version 3. Okay, the other thing is when you go into your contact records, first of all, if somebody opts out, they are closed out. You will not be able to send them another templated email. You still send them an Outlook email, but you can't send them any more templates because they've opted out. You can find those when you're looking at your contacts. You could go down, you can filter your fields by email opt out. And if it's selected, it means it's a little checkbox in there. That means they opted out. And you'll actually see when you look at their email address, there'll be a little yellow, I should take a screenshot of it. There'll be a little yellow exclamation point next to their email address, and it will actually tell you the date that they opted out. I get a lot of people that say, you didn't invite me to your Zoho webinar. And I go back and I look at the record and I go, oh, you opted out on December 23rd at 8:01 p.m. And they go, oops. So it really gives you a lot of information about the opt-outs. You can also filter your list by the latest email status. Now, sometimes the statuses aren't immediate. They send it, and as people open, it can take a day or two for all the results to go through. Maybe somebody's off work. Maybe they're on vacation. Maybe they didn't open their computer. Maybe they didn't check their email today. So sometimes it can take a day or two for all your results to come through. So we could go to the latest email status. We could sort it down by who's opened, who's clicked, who hasn't opened, who's bounced, who's responded, who's opened and not responded. So you can go through your list that you just sent and find lots of information about that send. And you can also see the stuff from your contact record. So you go into the contact record, and I always love this when people say, you never sent it to me, Karen. You guys all know my tricks now. Do not claim that that I did not send you an email if I did, because I can see it. So I can actually see this person, here's 2 mass emails. Here is a singular email. That's why it says IMAP, that one from my Outlook. And I can see if they were sent, delivered. I can see if they were opened. I can see if it was received. So I could see the various information about my sends. Okay, someone posted a question. Okay, George posted a question about I guess you're not able to send. Yes, good point. Before you start sending mass emails, you do have to go through what we call DKIM, so that someone couldn't just email on your behalf, like a spammer type of thing. So you do have to go into, I believe it's under company, but I'll find out exactly for you. And you have to authorize your domain, because if you don't authorize your domain, they will not send out 1,000 emails on your behalf. They want to make sure you're the real, McCoy. And that's a similar process that you had to go through an act or any product that you use, because that's, spammers all get around it, but you and I are just trying to, run our business. We have to go through this, but there are certain adjustments that have to be made, usually to the person that hosts your website. So in my case, I use HostGator. So I don't like to mess with that stuff. So you're able to literally go in and copy and paste it out of Zoho. I call up HostGator and I say, hey, I need this to be added to my DKIM record. And, they go, oh, go ahead and mail it to us. So I mail it to them and they paste it in, and life is wonderful. But you do have to authenticate your domain before you can start sending. Okay, there's a couple of AI features sprinkled in. I know you all know what AI is, and There are advanced AI features where you can actually talk and ask it to, and I'll do that hopefully in some of the later meetings. I go into Zoho Social, for example, and say, write a great post for Valentine's Day. And it gives me pictures, it gives me hashtags, it gives me choice of wording, and I can say, okay, do this one and post it on the 14th of February, and I'm done. To me, that's true AI. This is kind of like, I'll call it fake AI, where it just kind of goes and does things intuitively. So one of the things that I like is when you go into a contact record, you can go down to enrich data. And if the person has an email address like AOL or Comcast or um, Google or Yahoo, it's not going to work. It's looking for someone that has a um, company domain email address. So, for example, this one is actually my brother-in-law was at Hi Schwartz. Okay. So I said enrich data, and it went in there and it says, okay, here's possibly another um, email address, which I have the option of using or not using. I could have used this phone number. If there was nothing in there, obviously it would fill in the blank. Um, like in this case, I didn't have another phone number. So I said, yeah, go ahead and put the other. I guess it's, this is probably his main switchboard that I have. And this is probably the company switchboard. So I filled in the other phone number. It had a secondary email. It also gave me an industry. So I can pick what I want to have updated and have it update automatically. And it'll do that for addresses. It really depends on what information it can find on a person's website. I mean, it's not going into 17,000 areas. It's just kind of going to their website looking for basic information. Email summary. The jury's kind of out for me on this one. One of my clients, who shall remain nameless, we were looking at it, just I showed her something, and we looked at her email. And I said, "Oh my goodness, you were frustrated with me. Oh, you were unhappy. Oh, you were happy." And it was almost kind of embarrassing, but sometimes it gives you a good handle on how people are feeling. Like, I'm looking at this one. I got an email that showed gratitude. I had an email that was neutral. I had an email that was frustration. And to me, that's kind of like, you know what? They probably had trouble with something. I gave them a response, and then they wrote back and said, hey, it worked. So you kind of get those patterns. If I go in there and there's all these little frowny faces and frustrations, then I kind of know. And even if I go to send an email to them, it will tell me this customer has shown frustration. So it means maybe I might want to kind of look back at all the email. And yes, it does track all my Outlook email as well as my templated email. There's also something called Ask Zaya. And it's funny, they came up with the name Zaya probably 5 or 6 years ago. And that was the original AI before everybody started calling it AI. They probably, if they to do it over again, they would call it Zaya instead of Zaya, Z-A-I. But if you look down at the bottom right side of Zoho, you're going to see Ask Zaya. And you can just click this, and Zaya says, how can I help you? It's like a little chatbot in your own database. And you can say, can you help me build a call report? Can you show me how to authorize my domain? Can you tell me how to create a new template? Ask it anything you want, within reason, hopefully about Zoho, and it will answer that question about Zoho. It's meant to just show you Zoho functionality instead of having to search through KBs and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of neat. I use it quite a bit. Okay. That email intelligence that I just showed you to get those little smiley faces, you have to turn it on. There are settings. So some of you started to use Zoho and you haven't really gone into all the settings yet. Again, you start with the gear, the flower, or the setup, whatever you want to call it. There are personal settings, there's company settings, and you're going to need to go through all of those different settings and see if there are some things that you should be looking at. The email is where we set up our email. The first one is the email configuration. It's basically just for your Outlook, your day-to-day email. I believe that email deliverability, George, I think this, now that I think about it, I think this is where you find those DKIM records. and that information. That email intelligence that I just showed you, some people don't like it. So I think it's set by default to off, and you have to turn it on. Um, so you might want to look at some of these email settings, and there are quite a few of them, and they're pretty self-explanatory. And just go through them and make the changes that you want. Like some people, I think that email intelligence is kind of cute. I kind of like it. Some people hate it. They go, it's inaccurate. I don't want it. It's up to you. Turn it off if you don't want it. Okay. There's another cool thing that I use like never. But some people might like it, again, it's up to you, and that is to generate a summary. So this will go in and it will kind of tell you what is going on. This is a person, and here's the information we have about the person. And, here's the record manager. And, we currently have a deal in the sales cycle with the next 29 days. And, we've got some calls, and here's what the next step should be. These are all features that you can try. If you like them, use them. If you don't like them, don't use them. Okay, questions. Let me go down here. I think I have some more. Since I normally leave my mass emails until the last moment each month, I tend to send to 20,000 contacts at a time. How do you suggest to get used to daily limits instead of monthly limits? Um, uh, that is kind of a tough one. This person is asking. He usually uses 20,000 contacts, and he usually sends like a newsletter or something at the end of every month. What I would recommend is just creating your template and sending it to smaller portions every day, just to 1,000 a day. Somehow, maybe alphabetically from A to C and then D to F or something like that. It's probably a better idea. There's a couple of things that I'm thinking of. If you send to too many people and your bounce rate is in the 20 percentile, you probably will be shut off, and that's pretty much the standard on any product. So sending to 1,000 at a time is probably a little bit better idea. It gives you a little bit more chance to follow up on those people. If you really need to send to 20,000 at a time, let me know, and I can certainly ask if they would change that for you. I've never had anybody ask to have it changed, but I can certainly see if I could get it changed for you. Okay, I'm used to formatting notes in ACT, bolding, changing font, and underlining. I have not figured out how to format in Zoho. Um, and yeah, okay. So as I tell people when I look at their ACT databases and we move them to Zoho, I say ACT has been around for 40 years. That's a long time. In technology, that is forever. And that's kind of why ACT is like the Titanic at the moment and sinking down and catching a lot of water, because they added features over the years. Kind of like if you have an old house and you add a bedroom, and now, gee, I've got this great bedroom, but oh yeah, it doesn't have air conditioning because I can't get my vents to go out there. Or I have a new bathroom, and now I have to figure out how to get the plumbing to go out there. And yeah, I got the plumbing to go out there, but the hot water takes forever. So a lot of times when you add on to an old house, you have problems. And one of those things that ACT did without really thinking was to give you the ability to add bold and yellow and color and all kinds of cool things. Well, what happened is a lot of you knew when you moved from Act 22 to, I think, Act 23, all of a sudden you couldn't read any of your notes. Your notes were illegible. Or if you tried to export your notes, they were illegible because you had all this formatting. Some of you were routinely copying and pasting out of your emails, and the emails had HTML in there that you couldn't see. And these caused a lot of problems. I got a lot of databases that either the Notes stopped working. I have one today, as a matter of fact, and I suspect that the notes have stopped working because there's too much HTML in there because it fills up those SQL tables that we have in ACT and it causes problems. So yeah, I agree. It was cool to have bolding and fonts and all that kind of cool stuff, but it caused a lot of problems into the structure of the ACT program. Now, in the Zoho notes, they give you the option to add a title. So what I do for any note that's important is I add the title so that I can see it better. If you're relying on all those colors and all that, we could add a color coded field inside the notes. One thing we could do in Zoho that we couldn't do in ACT is add fields to your meetings and your tasks and your calls, your notes. So we could add a field into your notes that we call type of note, and we can color code that drop down. If that helps you, so you can find your red notes or your important notes, we could add maybe a status. So there are maybe workarounds, but yeah, that adding those fonts, that bolding, and those colors killed more databases than I care to imagine. Oh yeah. Um, Are there archives of the webinars that might show what fields transfer or don't from ACT to Zoho? When I do a conversion, I send you a document of your database and it shows you all the fields that are in both ACT and Zoho. So if the person asks that question, did their own conversion, I can send you a spreadsheet, obviously not with your data, but at least it would show you all the standard fields that are in Zoho. The other thing that's cool about Zoho, if you go into your field structure in your customized fields area, all your custom fields will be in brown and all the standard fields are in black. Is there a way to automate the last email field to populate when emails sent? Um, it's in there. It's not going to be your same ACT field that you used before. A lot of you wanted to have that last email field, and I brought those over so that you would have prior information from ACT. But moving forward, Zoho, because it was a system field in ACT, it wasn't something you could fill in. It was filled in automatically when you sent an email. Zoho does the same exact thing. It fills in that field automatically. So yes, there is a last email field in Zoho. It's not the same one as for some of you that I brought over the one from ACT just for archival purposes. Does Zoho notes keep them in order like ACT? Yes, it keeps them in alphabetical order or a date order. What other functionality would I lose if I migrate from ACT to Zoho? I can't imagine losing any functionality because Zoho has so many features. So you're talking about, I guess you're talking about that bolding that you don't have. Yeah, I mean, if that's a feature that's really important to you, yeah, you don't find that in Salesforce. You don't find that in um, Microsoft Dynamics. You don't find it in Zoho. You don't find it in HubSpot because it's going to screw up your database over a period of time. So I don't know what to tell you if that's a feature you're talking about. Should I share field lookups with other users in my org? Um, that depends. It depends on if they need them. If you're the only one that's using them, just use them for you. The big difference about sharing those lookups in Zoho is how long the list is going to be. And if you've got a bunch of lookups you're using that nobody else is using, probably just use them for you so that they won't have as long of a list to go through. This is my thoughts. Someone said which feature. I'm not sure what you're asking. Yeah, acted away with the colors for our scheduling. Yeah, someone is saying we used colors for our calendars to denote the different users. And I think I have two people on the call that are both in that same boat. And yes, ACT did away. ACT is kind of funny because usually technology, they keep adding features. They keep adding features. And prior to maybe Act 21, I used to run webinars and say, here's a new features in Act 19, and here's a new feature in Act 20. Now the new features are they fixed a couple of bugs, they took a few things away. So it's kind of hard for me to run a negative webinar and say, oh, here's what not to expect of the new features and the new version of Act because they're taking things away. If they don't work, if they have a problem with it, they're gone. So what I would do for your scheduling is, like I said, adding that custom field and making it color coordinated would be really helpful. There's also more ways to look at your calendars. In ACT, we had a task list. In Zoho, we have a meetings list, we have a calls list, we have a to-dos list. There's a lot more ways to look at things. So I think that we can put our heads together and come up with some really great alternatives. In ACT, I can click on a calendar date and I can see all of my tasks and meetings scheduled that day, week, or month. Okay, I'm trying to figure this one. I can click on a calendar date. So you're looking at one date on a calendar. But I guess I'm kind of confused on your question because if you're clicking on one date on your calendar, I'm not sure how that's going to day, week, or month. But yes, in Zoho, we do have daily, weekly, and monthly calendars, if that's what you're asking. I'm not. Okay. Does Zoho sync with your iPhone through an app like Companion Link and then to Apple native contacts and calendar? Usually, most of you used Companion Link because that was the only way that if you tried to use the ACT app, you either found it didn't work well or you couldn't even get logged into it at all. Zoho has a really robust app. So what I would highly recommend you do is you go into the App Store or the Google Store and download the Zoho CRM app. You log in using your same credentials that you use for your regular Zoho login. So it's no Mishka Mushka and having to come up with something crazy. It you'll see all your contacts. It doesn't look the same. It doesn't have the same layout because obviously your phone is small, but you can see all of your fields. The cool thing is it will work in airplane mode. That means it actually downloads your contacts into that app. So if you're somewhere where you don't have cell reception, you can still see your contacts. Now, does it put it into the native calendars and contacts? No, it's actually using its own calendar. As far as the contacts, you can click on a phone number and dial it. You can click on an address; it'll pop up into your maps or your navigator program. But you can kind of ask me, for a few more details of that offline. But it works very well, and you don't have to have the additional layer of either payment or support of going through a third-party app. Okay, any other questions? Those are all great questions. If it doesn't get into the Apple name, will their name pop up on the screen? Yes, the name will still pop up. You'll still see the pop up. I actually use a phone system that integrates with Zoho. So mine actually, if people are calling me on my business, it actually has a different ring, so I know it's a business call, and it actually works just a little bit different. But you're able to integrate Zoho with, I think, 450 different phone systems. So that's also an option too that a lot of people are doing. Great questions, guys. Okay. I think I've hit all the questions. If I haven't, you know where I am. And I look forward to seeing you on January 28th or 22nd. And if you have other questions or you have other topics you'd like me to cover, please let me know because I'm always looking for ideas. And thank you so much for joining. Bye.